The bolt was changed. That's the first thing I noticed when I tried to slide my key in. It just stopped. No click, no give. Like the house itself was telling me, you don't belong here anymore. I stared at the lock, blinking like maybe it was just fatigue messing with my hand. I'd driven 3 hours straight back from helping my cousin finish a roof job 2 counties over. My back was sore, my palms scraped raw. I had a trunk full of groceries for the week and a six-pack of the local stuff she liked from that roadside stand near the lake. Thought it'd be a nice surprise. Thought I was coming home. Then the door opened. She stood there, Rachel, with her arms folded like she'd been practicing the stance in a mirror. The porch light was off, but the hallway behind her was lit, spilling out around her like some cheap courtroom drama setup. And there, just past her shoulder, stood her daughter, Ivy, arms crossed too, like a synchronized execution squad. Her expression said everything: smug, angry, and most of all, in control. "You know what you did," Rachel said, lips thin, voice clipped like a blade. "No," I said. It came out dry, but not weak. "I don't. You can drop the act," Ivy chimed in, with that smirk she always pulled when she got away with something as a kid, only this time it wasn't about a broken vase or a failed test. "Just leave, the bag's there." She nodded toward the bottom step. A duffel, mine, half-zipped and sloppily packed like someone had done it while angry. My work boots, still crusted in drywall dust, were on top like a final insult. The sight of them, my boots, my tools, my life, dumped like trash, hit harder than anything they'd said. Rachel didn't look at me again, just turned and closed the door. Quiet, no slam, that would have been a kindness. So I stood there, on my own porch where I'd rewired the lights, where I'd sanded every inch of that damn wood railing she picked out from the catalog, holding a bag packed by a woman who didn't even ask me a question, just believed something, enough to change the locks. No explanation, no phone call, just exile. You ever felt that? Not rage, not even betrayal yet, just this blank, nauseating confusion, like waking up mid-sentence in someone else's nightmare. I didn't knock, I didn't yell. I just picked up the bag and walked back to the truck. She'd changed the locks. That part was clear. What wasn't clear, what haunted me the entire drive to that budget extended stay motel off the freeway, was why. What story had been told? What had I supposedly done? The silence was the worst part. The silence and the fact that she looked relieved while doing it. The vending machine outside my room ate my dollar. I didn't even bother kicking it. I just sat on that rock-hard motel mattress, surrounded by cheap wood laminate and a dead remote battery, wondering if this was some kind of test, or punishment, or trap. I checked my phone. No calls, no texts. Just one from a mutual friend I hadn't seen in weeks. "Hey man, not my business, but give her some space. Things sound rough." Give her space. Space from what? From me? From the guy who helped raise her daughter like his own? The guy who covered Ivy's dental when Rachel's insurance wouldn't? The guy who taught her to parallel park? Who clapped the loudest at her school play, even when she called me just her mom's husband to her friends? But none of that mattered now. Someone had decided I was guilty, and no one, not my wife, not the girl I once called my own, had given me the dignity of asking a single damn question. This is the part where I should say I cried, or drank, or punched a wall, but I didn't. I sat there, and something in me began to go quiet. Not numb, not broken, just focused. Like a volume knob turning down all the noise of panic, confusion, and heartbreak. That's when I started thinking clearly. And if you're still reading this, maybe hit that subscribe button. Over 97% of folks who hear these stories aren't subscribed, and it really pushes the team to keep going. Thanks. Back to it, my focus narrowed. I thought about Ivy's last few interactions with me, thought about that little argument we had 2 weeks ago about her college applications, and the fact that I wouldn't co-sign a personal loan for a business idea she'd scribbled on the back of a menu. She said I didn't trust her. I said I didn't co-sign with people who had no plan beyond hashtags and vibes. She stormed off. Rachel called me too strict. That was it. And now I was locked out. There was something here. Something ugly and deliberate. I could feel it forming, like a bruise that hadn't surfaced yet. And while they slept comfortably in a house I helped build, telling themselves whatever version of the story made them feel righteous, I sat there in the glow of a parking lot security light. silent and calculating. The room smelled like over-bleached linens and distant cigarettes. Standard issue for places people aren't meant to stay in long. One queen bed, one flickering lamp, a kitchenette that buzzed like a dying insect when the fridge kicked on. But it was paid for, and the clerk didn't ask questions. That made it perfect. I unpacked the essentials. 2 shirts, my boots, the toiletry bag Rachel had gotten me last Christmas. Funny thing, that bag. It still had the tiny leather tag with my initials on it. She'd wrapped it in silver paper and kissed my cheek like I was her forever. Now it sat on the edge of a cheap bathroom sink, looking like a joke with a punchline I hadn't heard yet. The first 2 days, I waited. I told myself it was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel would call, voice shaking, saying Ivy had exaggerated something. That maybe she'd been scared or confused, and Rachel had acted on instinct. We'd talk it out, maybe see a counselor, go somewhere quiet. But the phone didn't ring. What did come in were a few awkward messages from friends, just enough to make it worse. Give her time. Maybe just let it cool off a bit. Not my place, but I'm sure things will settle. Settle? Settle what? No one would say what they'd heard. They all acted like I'd been caught cheating or yelling or God knows. Like I'd been caught. I wasn't a saint, but I was damn sure I wasn't a criminal. By the 3rd night, something shifted in me. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was more like the moment you realize you've stepped in something slick in the dark. That slow, crawling unease. Ivy, that last real conversation had been with her 2 weeks ago. She'd cornered me in the garage about co-signing a loan for some startup idea she and a friend had cooked up in a group chat, something about reselling sneakers or vintage records. She couldn't even explain the margins. I'd said no, not with her track record, not with her already being late on insurance payments for the car I bought her. She snapped, called me controlling, said I wasn't her real dad anyway, that her mom let me act like I ran the place, but I was just the guy footing the bills. I told Rachel that night. She just sighed and said Ivy was finding herself, that I should give her space. Now I was the one in exile. That night, I poured myself the last of a warm beer and opened my laptop, not for emails, not for news, for evidence. I opened the shared calendar we used, checked dates, checked messages, anything that felt off. Then I pulled up the camera feed from the shop. Repair garage I rent outside town, mostly side gigs these days. Old motorcycles, yard equipment, vintage appliances people don't want to toss. I'd installed cameras there after some break-ins in the area. Never thought I'd be scanning them for personal reasons. But on the feed from 2 weeks ago, I saw it, Ivy, standing in front of the door, on the phone, pacing. The angle wasn't great, but audio caught snippets. Just enough. She'll believe me. She always does. No, I don't need a reason. He's just creepy, okay? Controlling. A pause. Because if he's gone, she'll stop saying no. My blood went cold. She wasn't scared of me. She wasn't traumatized. She was strategizing. And it worked. Rachel didn't ask. She didn't check. She just took a teenage girl's tantrum, wrapped it in self-righteousness, and used it to justify throwing me out like expired milk. I rewound, played it again. Every syllable hit different now. It wasn't just a lie. It was a targeted lie. Weaponized. And if she'd told her mom that, what else had she said? To neighbors, to friends? I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with a narrative that had already taken root while I was offloading drywall into someone else's attic. I backed up my files, saved the footage to a drive, slipped it into the lining of my duffel like a weapon I didn't want to use, but knew I might have to. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of heartbreak, because of clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a cooling off period. It was a setup. And someone, maybe both of them, had bet that I'd take it quietly. They had no idea who they were playing with. The first message I noticed was from Rob, my oldest friend since middle school. Hey man, just checking in. Heard some things. Hope you're okay. That was 2 days after I found the footage. I wrote back immediately, asked what he'd heard. No reply. Nothing. The next day, his profile was gone from my friend list. So was Trisha's and Dina's, even her dad, Rachel's dad, the one who once called me the most decent man our family's ever seen, had quietly unfriended me, blocked me even. No calls, no texts, just vanishing. I tried to call my sister-in-law, Lisa, straight to voicemail. I left a message anyway. Calm, non-confrontational. Hey, just hoping to understand what's being said. No pressure, just, clarity would be nice. She never called back. I was being erased, not accused. That would have at least given me something to push back on. I was being insinuated, left to rot in that gray zone between suspicion and silence where everyone assumes guilt without having to say the word. A few more days went by. The shop stayed empty. Regulars stopped calling. I walked into the diner I used to hit every Thursday after work, and the waitress wouldn't meet my eyes. She took my order, sure, but her smile was gone. Her voice clipped, like I was radioactive and she was handling me with tongs. When the check came, there was a note folded under the receipt. It said, "Just wanted to say I don't believe it." No signature. I stared at those words for a long time. It. Not what, just it, like even trying to name the thing would stain her. I called one more friend, Matt. We'd fished together, worked together. Hell, I'd helped him move during a snowstorm once. He answered. That surprised me. "Matt, man, what the hell's going on? What are people hearing?" He hesitated, then sighed. "She said Ivy told her you made her feel uncomfortable." That's all she told anyone, I think. But you know how that lands. You're a grown man. She's, what, 17? 18, I corrected. "I'm not saying it's true," he added quickly, "but people hear that and don't need details, just a shadow." Exactly. I thanked him for telling me, told him I had proof, that it was a lie, that I had video, audio, a damn timeline. He said, "I believe you, man," but it sounded like he didn't. The call ended, and I just sat there in my motel room staring at the blank TV screen like it had answers. Ivy had played this brilliantly. She didn't accuse me of anything specific. She didn't have to. She just dropped poison into the water and watched people drink. He made me uncomfortable. That phrase doesn't need evidence. It doesn't even need context. It's sticky, insidious, designed to trigger fear, protection, and a swift severing of ties. And Rachel, she didn't correct anyone. She let it fester, let the whispers do the work. I remembered the time Ivy chipped her tooth during a pool party and wouldn't tell her mom. Only me. I took her to the emergency dentist, paid cash. She called me Dad in the car that day. First time ever. I remembered the damn braces, $6,000, straight from my savings. Rachel was laid off that year. The used Ford we got her for graduation. The college applications I edited. The way she'd text me first when she locked herself out or needed a ride or was scared to tell her mom something. But now I was the bogeyman in her story. The thing she had to escape. And everyone else, they didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to pick sides. So they just stepped away. Quietly. Cowardly. The silence was deafening. I started to delete contacts one by one, not out of spite, just clarity. You learn real quick who believes in your character when you're not in the room to defend it. I sat in my truck that night with the footage playing on loop, her voice. She'll believe me, she always does, and she knew exactly what she was doing. And Rachel, she didn't even ask me to explain, didn't demand proof, just acted like a judge without trial, kicked me out, changed the locks, painted me as a shadow. I wasn't angry yet, not the loud, destructive kind. This was a colder thing, a steady, simmering pressure building under the surface. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I realized I had given everything to a family that would throw me to the wolves if it meant avoiding one uncomfortable conversation. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead innocence. I was going to prepare, because if they wanted silence, they'd get it, but it would be mine. And it would be weaponized. The law office was tucked between a nail salon and a pawn shop in a part of town where nobody went unless they had to. That's why I chose it. I didn't need anyone recognizing me walking into some glassy high-rise. I didn't need Rachel's friends whispering that I was lawyering up. I needed privacy. I needed someone sharp, and I needed control. The receptionist looked up as I walked in, her face neutral, polite. She slid a clipboard toward me without saying much. I appreciated that. I filled it out, checked the boxes, and waited in a chair that had seen better years. My knee bounced the entire time, not from nerves, just energy with nowhere to go. His name was Alton, mid-50s, gray sweater under a plain blazer, eyes that scanned like a scanner at TSA. Efficient, impersonal, looking for threats. He didn't waste time on small talk. That was the first sign I'd found the right guy. He asked for the basics. I gave him the dates, the years, the assets. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. What grounds did she cite for removal? I laughed once. Short, bitter. None, she just believed her daughter. Changed the locks. unpacked my bag like I was a delivery she needed returned. He nodded slowly, flipping a page. Did she file a temporary protective order? No, no police, no restraining order, nothing official, just rumors. That's good, he said. Less cleanup. I told him about the footage, the audio from the shop. I watched his eyes flicker slightly as I described the clip, the timing, the phrasing. She'll believe me, she always does. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a small padded envelope. We'll get that duplicated and notarized. Chain of custody matters in case it gets ugly. I nodded. I'm not looking to burn it all down, I said, but I'm not walking away with my hands empty. I'm not fighting for scraps. Alton smiled for the first time. It wasn't warm. It was approving. Good, that makes this easier. We went over the financials. The pension I'd built over 19 years, the equity in the house still legally split, though I'd been the one paying down the mortgage every month while Rachel transitioned careers for 4 years straight, the credit cards she maxed out redecorating, her student loan debt from a degree she never finished. He took it all in with the stillness of a surgeon. Then he asked, "You want to fight for the house?" "I want what's mine," which is half at least, more if possible. I want clean lines. No alimony, no second chances. He paused. Children? No biological. Just Ivy. And how long were you married? 6 years. I've been in her life since she was 8. She's 18 now. He tapped a pen against the folder. That gives you leverage. More than she thinks. Courts like clean track records. You have any prior incidents? Anything she could throw at you? Not a damn thing, I said. Not even a parking ticket. Then here's what we do. We prep everything. We don't initiate, not yet. I frowned. Why not? Because she will. They always do, he said, tapping his temple. The guilt will wear off. The confidence will falter. She'll want to gloat or reconcile or push for an apology. That's when you move, not before. I sat back in the leather chair and exhaled. Something about hearing someone else say it, she'll reach out, made the blood in my body slow down. Like I could finally feel the pressure easing off the coil I'd been wound around. Alton slid a folder toward me. This is the prep list. Documents, assets, passwords, shared accounts. Bring them in. We'll draft the papers in advance. When she calls, we hit send. What if she doesn't call? She will, he said, because she thinks she's in control, and people like that, they don't stay silent for long. I left the office with that padded envelope in my coat and a USB backup in my glove box. The cold November air felt different now, like it didn't sting so much. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I wasn't waiting for truth to catch up. I was building something, not revenge, not yet, just structure, order, foundation, because if Rachel thought exile would break me, she'd forgotten who she married. I'm the guy who rebuilds engines from rust. I know exactly how to take something apart and put it back together stronger. And this time, I was starting with the end in mind. 2 weeks, 14 days of silence from Rachel. Not a single call, not a single text, just a digital obituary of our marriage slowly unfolding through mutual friends unfollowing, side eyes from acquaintances at the grocery store, and the steady erosion of my social footprint. And then, out of nowhere, my phone lit up. Rachel, mobile. I stared at it for a full 3 rings before I answered. Didn't rush, didn't flinch. Just slid my finger across the screen and waited. Her voice came through sugar-coated, soaked in self-satisfaction. Well, look who finally picked up, she said, lilting, almost musical. Had enough time to think? I didn't answer. I just let her fill the silence. I figured maybe you were ready to be an adult about this. Say your piece, apologize. Maybe we can start untangling this mess without dragging it into something ugly. It was the tone that struck me, not angry, not hurt, playful, like I was a child sulking in his room and she was offering me a cookie if I came out and said I was sorry. I let a beat pass. Then, let's meet, I said. Today works. I'll swing by around 3. She hesitated for a blink too long. Oh, okay, so you're finally ready to talk? I am, I said, but I want Ivy there. Silence, just for a second, then she masked it. Sure, she's here. We can all talk like grown-ups. I'll bring coffee, I added. See you then. I ended the call before she could respond, then I pulled the folder out of the safe. Not a metaphorical one, a literal fireproof safe I picked up from the hardware store and bolted to the floor of the storage unit I rented the week after she threw me out. Inside, the notarized transcripts, the timeline, the printed texts, and 3 copies of the surveillance clip on labeled flash drives. I also packed the final version of the asset separation agreement. No alimony. I kept the house. She kept her debt and her decorator's inventory. It was all clean, unemotional, uncompromising. Alton had taught me well. I took my time getting dressed, not a suit, too dramatic, not casual, too soft. Pressed shirt, clean slacks, boots polished. I looked like someone who'd come to do business. At 2:54, I pulled into the driveway. It hadn't changed. Same flower pots I'd installed last spring, same faded welcome mat. I'd bought that mat too. It had a phrase on it. Home is where the heart is. Cute. On brand. The front door opened before I knocked. Rachel stood there in yoga pants and a cardigan, makeup light but intentional. She wore a smile like it was a weapon. "Look at you," she said. "All cleaned up. You really took this seriously, huh?" I didn't respond, just handed her the coffee I'd brought. Black, no sugar, exactly how she used to take it when she still asked me things. Inside, the air smelled of lavender cleaner and the faint edge of burned toast. Ivy was on the couch, one leg tucked under her, phone in hand, pretending not to look up. "Hey," she mumbled, barely glancing at me. I nodded once. "Thanks for making time." Rachel gestured to the couch. "Sit. Let's just talk, okay? No lawyers, no threats. Just family." That word made my jaw tighten. Family. I sat across from them and set the folder down on the coffee table. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Everything," I said. "Assets, timelines, and a formal request for a written statement from Ivy regarding the events she shared with you. I'll need her to confirm those statements in detail and sign." Her smile faltered. "Wait, what?" I turned to Ivy. "I think it's time we all heard it again. Out loud. What exactly did you say I did?" The girl froze. Her eyes darted to her mom, then back to me. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down. Rachel stood. "What is this? Some kind of stunt? You said you were ready to talk." "I am?" I replied. Calm, cold, but I'm done talking in the abstract. I'm here for facts and truth. I slid my phone onto the table, recording light already blinking. Rachel's voice rose. "You can't record us without permission." "I can in this state," I said. "It's one-party consent, and I'm the party." Ivy's hands were shaking. "You said you wanted to fix this," Rachel said, her voice thinner now, less playful. "I never said that." The room went still. She thought I was coming to grovel. She had no idea. She wasn't in control anymore. She was sitting in a house I was about to reclaim, next to a daughter who had crafted a lie with surgical cruelty, and the thing they both feared most wasn't my anger, it was how calm I was. Ivy bolted up from the couch before I even sat down. "Wait, what's happening? Why is he dressed like that?" Rachel stood frozen in the hallway, her arms crossed again, but this time the stance didn't look rehearsed. It looked confused. The smile from earlier hadn't returned. Her mouth twitched, like it wasn't sure if it should smirk or ask for help. Behind me, Alton stepped through the door, quiet, measured, not imposing. He never needed to be, just calm, gray, and meticulous like a chess clock ticking toward checkmate. Rachel's eyes flicked to him. "Who's this?" "Legal counsel?" I said, placing the folder on the kitchen table like I'd done it 100 times. "We'll need a witness." Rachel's voice sharpened. "Wait, what is this?" "Divorce," I said, sitting. "Full separation of assets drafted. Includes distribution of jointly held property, release of financial obligation, and the necessary addendum related to false allegations made against me." I looked at Ivy now, square in the eyes, "which I am requesting a written, signed, and dated statement clarifying." Ivy flinched like I'd slapped her. "You're joking," Rachel said. "You're trying to bully us into retracting something?" "No," Alton said smoothly, finally speaking. "We're asking for documentation to correct a record, and in accordance with the reputational harm clause your husband's employer includes in its HR policy, the matter needs to be cleared immediately. You're both free to refuse, but you'll be doing so under recorded advisement." Rachel blinked. "What are you talking about? What clause?" Alton glanced at me, then back to her. Employment Clause 17b, specifically regarding character-based investigations, allegations, even unspoken, can trigger internal review processes. The longer they remain on record, the higher the risk of automatic suspension or loss of retirement benefits. That wasn't exactly true, but it sounded legal enough, and I watched as Rachel's expression cracked, because she didn't know enough to challenge it. "You're acting like we're in court," she snapped. "This was a family issue. You said you wanted to talk." I nodded. "I did. Now I'm talking." I turned to Ivy. "You told your mother I made you uncomfortable, that I was controlling, creepy. You said she should kick me out." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just this tiny inhale, like she was about to speak and couldn't find the first note. Rachel stepped between us. "Don't put her on the spot like that." "She put me in a motel," I interrupted. "She put me in exile. She made me into something unspoken. I am not raising my voice. I am not insulting anyone. I am asking for clarity. That's not aggression. That's survival." Ivy was pale now, the kind of pale that precedes confession or collapse. "You don't understand," she said finally, almost a whisper. "Then explain," I said. "We're recording." She looked down at her hands. They were clenched tight in her lap. It wasn't supposed to go this far. There it was. She looked up at her mom, eyes wide, frantic, like she was trying to summon sympathy through sheer panic. "I just wanted him to back off. He wouldn't co-sign the loan. He said I wasn't responsible." "Because you're not," I said calmly. Rachel snapped. "She's 18. You could have had more empathy." I ignored her. "You lied, because I didn't give you what you wanted. So you told her I made you uncomfortable, knowing she'd side with you." Ivy buried her face in her hands. Rachel looked between us like the walls were closing in. Okay, maybe she exaggerated. "No, don't do that," I said, looking at her for the first time in full. "You didn't ask me. You didn't ask her to clarify. You just changed the locks and handed me a bag." I pointed to the document. "This is the consequence, not of one lie, of your willingness to believe it without question." Alton quietly reached forward and clicked the pen on the table. "We'll need the statement today," he said. "If you refuse, we'll proceed under assumption of malice, and your client will pursue damages related to employment impact." "Wait, what? Client?" Rachel stepped back. I turned to her, voice flat. "You were my wife, she was my daughter, and now you're both liabilities." Her face twisted. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm calm," I said, "and I'm done being silent." Ivy whispered, "I didn't mean for you to lose your job." "You didn't mean for anything," I replied. "That's the problem." Rachel reached out like she wanted to grab the folder. Alton moved it slightly out of reach. "I suggest you read it thoroughly," he said, "and sign only if you agree. We can step outside while you discuss." But they didn't move. They just sat there, mother and daughter, frozen in a house they'd turned into a courtroom, and suddenly realized they were the defendants. They weren't in control anymore. I was. "I lied," Ivy finally screamed, voice cracking so sharply it echoed off the kitchen tiles. "Okay, I made it up." It came out like a geyser, sudden and violent, like her guilt had been simmering under a steel lid that just gave way. Her whole body folded in, face flushed, tears streaking unevenly down her cheeks. "There was no incident," she gasped, choking on the words. "Nothing happened. He didn't touch me. He didn't do anything. I wanted him gone." Rachel's head snapped toward her daughter, mouth open like she'd forgotten how to close it. "Ivy," she whispered. One word, soft, terrified. "I was pissed," Ivy went on, hands clenched in her lap so hard her knuckles turned white. "He said no to the loan, said I wasn't ready, that I didn't have a plan. And you always take his side on the money stuff. So I figured if he wasn't around." "You figured what?" Rachel's voice was strangled, but rising. "You figured if you ruined our marriage, I'd be more flexible?" "I just said he creeped me out," Ivy shouted. "That's all I said. I didn't even describe anything. I knew you'd fill in the rest." Alton didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. I leaned back, folding my hands slowly in my lap, not saying a word, just watching. "You knew I'd fill in the rest," Rachel repeated, as if testing the phrase on her own tongue. Her knees buckled, and she sank into the chair like her spine had disconnected. "You said I could trust you, that it was serious, that I needed to protect you." "I didn't think it'd get this far," Ivy wailed. I didn't think he'd leave without explaining. I thought he'd yell and you'd defend me and then we'd just go back to normal eventually. Alton scribbled something silently on his pad. I saw it upside down across the table. Voluntary confession, it time-stamped. Rachel looked like she'd been sucker punched, her face pale, lips trembling, eyes darting to me like she expected a performance of some kind. Anger, maybe. Gloating. I gave her nothing. Why didn't you say something sooner? She asked Ivy. Why didn't you stop me when I was packing his things? Ivy didn't answer. The silence dragged. I took a breath and broke it. I wasn't going to yell, I said, my voice low. I wasn't going to try and fix a story you both decided to believe without even asking me to verify a single fact. You didn't ask, you acted, that was the choice. Rachel's face collapsed in on itself. I thought I was doing the right thing. No, I said, you thought you were doing the easy thing. Ivy sobbed harder now, but I didn't comfort her. That part of me, the one that used to see her as my daughter, that used to forgive her for things big and small, that taught her how to drive and held her hand during her first breakup, was already dead. She killed it, and her mother helped bury it. You believed I was dangerous, I said. Not lazy, not selfish, dangerous. And not only did you not ask me about it, you never even considered it might not be true. I was scared, Rachel whispered. You were convenient, I said. You wanted to protect your child. I get that. But the moment you chose her story without hearing mine, you stopped being my wife. And I nodded at Ivy, who had her face buried in her hands. She stopped being mine the second she turned me into a threat because I wouldn't play bank for her fantasy business. Rachel's voice cracked. I didn't know. That's the point, I said. You didn't care to. For a moment, all three of us sat in that thick, unbearable silence. The kind that isn't just awkward, it's toxic, heavy, irreversible. Alton cleared his throat softly and turned the page on his notepad. Rachel looked up at me, glassy-eyed. So what happens now? I pushed the folder slightly closer to her. Now you read, then you sign, then I leave. For good. But what about everything? She asked, desperate breath catching. Everything we built? I stared at her. Turns out it wasn't built on much. The foundation cracked when the door locked behind me 2 weeks ago. Now it was crumbling, and there was nothing left to save. Rachel reached for the papers like they might bite. Her fingers hovered just above the manila folder, trembling slightly, like even touching the agreement would make it real. She looked up at me, searching for something in my face, anger, regret, softness, but I gave her none of it. Here are the terms, I said, voice level. No alimony. I retain full ownership of the house, given my sole financial contributions for the last 5 years, and your recorded abandonment of the property. You take your belongings. You waive future claims. We separate clean, no appeals, no drama. She blinked like she hadn't understood me, like I was speaking a language she hadn't prepared to hear. Wait, she stammered, glancing between me and Alton. This is permanent? Yes, I said. It's a divorce, not a sabbatical. She opened the folder and skimmed, her eyes moving too fast to actually read anything. It was performative, panic in motion. But we can fix this, she said suddenly, eyes snapping back to me. Now that we know the truth? Now that she's admitted it? No, I interrupted, my tone cutting through the air like glass. You don't get to say now that we know. You didn't want to know. You didn't ask. You just believed. And you acted. And you changed the locks. And you told your friends. Whatever made you feel noble. Her lips parted as if to reply, but nothing came out. You didn't ask, I repeated, softer now. Not out of mercy, just finality. You didn't even hesitate. Ivy wiped at her face, still puffy from crying. Her voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I didn't look at her. I didn't speak. The silence I gave her was the most honest response I had. Not cruelty, just closure. Because apologies don't rewind time. They don't clean the air or scrub out the rot. Sometimes they just confirm how deep the damage really went. Rachel finally found words again, though they came out shaky. I made a mistake. I see that now. But I was trying to protect my daughter. You have to understand that. I let that sit there a moment, then I said, You protected a lie. You didn't even stop to check what you were protecting. She dropped into the kitchen chair hard. Her hands clutched the edges of the agreement now, like they were anchoring her to reality. I thought I knew you, she whispered. No, I said. You just knew who I wasn't, and that was enough for you to throw me out. Ivy opened her mouth again, a fresh wave of tears starting up. Please, I was angry. I didn't think it'd go this far. I was scared you'd ruin everything I wanted, and I thought. I still didn't look at her. Alton slid a pen across the table. This is your copy, he said quietly. We'll have a courier bring the originals once signed. You can have a third-party witness present if you'd like. It won't change the outcome. Rachel didn't touch the pen. She just stared at it like it was a needle she didn't want to feel. You really won't forgive me? She said, her voice small now. After everything? I finally met her eyes. There was no fire in mine, just clean surgical precision. You didn't ask me what happened, I said, each word deliberate. You didn't even want to hear it. That was your choice. I gestured at the folder, the cold air between us, the broken girl sobbing 3 feet away. This is mine. Rachel folded, visibly smaller now. Her shoulders slumped. Her posture sagged. It was the posture of someone who realized she'd bet everything on being right and just watched the cards flip the other way. You'll regret this, she said, but it sounded more like a wish than a threat. I regret trusting the wrong people, I said, but that's handled now. I stood slowly, adjusting my cuffs, and nodded to Alton. He rose, collected the duplicate folder, and turned to the door. Rachel didn't stand. Ivy didn't speak again. Neither tried to stop us, because they both understood now. I wasn't bluffing, I wasn't angry, I was done. And in that silence as we walked out, I could feel it sinking in for them. The worst part wasn't the loss. It was knowing they'd been so sure they were right, and that I'd let their certainty destroy them, without ever raising my voice. She came on a Sunday, 1 week to the day after she signed the agreement, 1 week since she lost the house she once called her sanctuary, and the man who built it for her. I heard her car pull up while I was restaining the porch railing. I didn't stop, didn't look up, just kept brushing that warm, cedar-toned lacquer across the wood grain like nothing was happening behind me. I heard the passenger door open, then shut again. Ivy didn't come inside. She stayed in the car, head down, headphones in. That told me everything. She hadn't come to help. She'd come to avoid. Rachel's footsteps were soft, careful, almost reverent, like she was approaching a gravestone. Hey, she said gently. No venom this time. Just defeat. I nodded once. Didn't speak, didn't stop working. She stood on the porch for a long moment before unlocking the door with the temporary code I'd given her. She walked inside like a visitor, which she was. She'd asked to pick up her things without an audience. No attorneys, no confrontation, just her and the past. I agreed. I had no interest in dragging this out. I told her she had 2 hours. She used every second of them. I stayed outside, finished the railing, hosed off the driveway, replaced 2 garden lights that had shorted out, mundane things. But every nail I tapped, every screw I tightened, felt like reclaiming inches of a life I hadn't realized I'd lost long before the lies began. From time to time, I saw her through the window, carrying out boxes, wrapped picture frames, that god-awful glass vase she insisted was an antique, even though it still had the Marshall sticker on the bottom. She didn't cry. That surprised me. She moved like someone going through ritual, steady, numb. At one point, she stepped back onto the porch and opened her mouth like she might say something. I didn't look up from the bulb I was replacing, so she closed it again, walked past me without a sound, the final box tucked under her arm like she was afraid to drop it. At the edge of the driveway, she paused. I left something inside, she said, not looking at me. No answer. She turned, went back in. 5 minutes later, her car door slammed. Engine started. She backed out of the drive, slow and deliberate, and didn't glance back once. Ivy didn't wave, didn't blink, just stared straight ahead like a kid at the DMV. When the dust settled and the house was mine again, I walked back inside. Everything was exactly where I left it, except for one thing. On the living room shelf, propped up between a ceramic owl and a stack of old vinyls, sat a framed photo. It was us. A Christmas morning years ago, me in flannel pajamas, Rachel laughing with her head on my shoulder, Ivy holding up a sweater that read Team Santa with a smirk only teenagers can pull off. We looked happy, real. But now it felt like a still from a movie I'd only half watched, like someone else's memory left in my home. I picked it up, held it for a second, not nostalgic, not angry, just observing. Then I carried it to the garage, opened the big plastic bin marked donation, and dropped it in. The glass didn't shatter. It just landed with a soft thud. No drama, no ritual, just disposal, because I wasn't here to destroy things. I didn't need to set fire to the past to know it didn't belong to me anymore. I needed space, and that photo, It was just another thing that took some up. That evening, a neighbor from across the street, Ron, mid-60s, retired Navy, came over while I was locking up. "She's gone?" he asked gently. "Yeah." He nodded, not pressing. "Didn't seem like she packed much." "She took what mattered to her," I said. He grunted. "Guess that makes one of you." I smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised." He didn't ask anything else. Just gave me a firm pat on the shoulder and walked back across the street. Later that night, I sat on the back deck with a beer in hand, the stars clear for once. I didn't think about what was gone. I thought about what remained. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt clean, and that was enough. It arrived in a plain white envelope, no return address, no markings, just her name. Slanted handwriting, unmistakably Ivy's. Rachel found it wedged in the mailbox between a real estate flyer and a water bill she no longer had to pay. For a moment, she thought it might be a thank you card or something hopeful, maybe Ivy reaching out after that stilted silence that had blanketed their drives together ever since the move. She opened it slowly. The paper inside was lined, torn from a notebook. No greeting, no dear mom, just ink and confession. I lied. I know I already said that in front of him. But I didn't say everything. Not really. I was jealous of him. "You loved him in a way you never looked at my dad. You trusted him with things you didn't trust yourself with. He was stable and careful and always knew what to say, even when I was awful to him. Especially when I was awful to him. He made me feel seen, and I hated it. I hated that I needed his approval more than yours. And when he said no to me, just once, just that one time, it felt like betrayal. So I betrayed him first." Rachel sat at the kitchen table in the dim apartment she now rented. The chair wobbled slightly under her as she read. The AC buzzed weakly. She hadn't put up curtains yet. The walls were still bare. It was easy. Too easy. I knew you'd believe me. I played the daughter card and made my discomfort just vague enough that you filled in the rest. You were the one who said creepy, not me. I just let you run with it. I watched you pack his bags. I watched you change the locks, and I didn't stop you because part of me thought maybe we'd finally have us again, like it used to be, but it wasn't us after that. Rachel's hands trembled. It was just silence and guilt and a house that didn't feel like a home anymore. And a mom who cried in the bathroom when she thought I couldn't hear her. She pressed her lips together to stop the sound from coming out. He was too good. That was the problem. He never fought back, never screamed, just left. And now you're alone. Because of me. But also because of you. He might forgive you one day. But if he does, it won't be because I asked him to. It'll be because he chose peace. Rachel read that line twice, then a third time. And finally, she let the letter drop into her lap as her face collapsed into her hands. Not a dramatic sob, not a wail, just the kind of weeping that sounds like breathing underwater, slow, suffocating, endless. She hadn't heard from him since the move out. No messages, no emails, not even a legal notice after the paperwork cleared, just clean detachment, erased presence. He'd vanished in the exact opposite way Ivy's accusation had spread, quietly, invisibly, permanently. She stared at the letter on her lap, now crumpled where her fingers had gripped it too hard. For the first time, she realized she didn't miss his voice. She missed his silence, the way he used to fill a room just by being calm, the way he could de-escalate Ivy's worst tantrums without ever raising a word, the way she used to feel safe, even when nothing else made sense. She missed all of that. And she'd never see it again, because while she'd been looking for some storm, some fury she could fight against, he'd simply walked away, not out of weakness, but out of strength. He never raised his voice, he never demanded justice, he didn't burn the house down. He just took his dignity, folded it under his arm like a coat, and stepped into a future without her in it. And now? She sat in a kitchen that smelled like old takeout and sadness, with a letter from the only person still willing to speak to her, a daughter who now understood the price of a lie, and a man who'd left no forwarding address. Because he didn't need to. He'd already arrived.